Hello, and welcome to our daily sessions on work remote strategies. Today, our speaker is Sandy Lewis. Sandy is one of our executive coaches who's been with us since the beginning, pretty much, and she's coached so many people. I don't think we could count the number of people she's coached one-on-one. And so now we have her with us today, and she's speaking about strengths. Now, we all know that using our strengths is a good thing, but how can we use it specifically during these coronavirus times? So here we are with Sandy Lewis. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Sonia. Thank you. So as Sonia mentioned, what I'm going to talk about today is strengths. And there's a number of ways we can get to our strengths. I'm going to focus in on one. I'm going to talk about how we can use them from work and also at home. I think that if we think about work, all too often I see people change when they go to work. And I was in corporate for a long time. I see people inflate and put on this big persona. I see people deflate and kind of shrink away. And I think that's exhausting when we aren't being our authentic selves. And so if I could wave my magic wand, I would make it such that we all showed up as who we are and our authentic selves, our best selves, regardless of the situation. So if I could see you at the supermarket on Saturday and a meeting on Monday at 9 a.m. and I don't know, a soccer game or a basketball game on Thursday, I'd see the same person. And so, we shift. And so now things are very different for all of us. Either we might be working from home, we might have lost our jobs, we might be working in our same jobs, but under a higher stress circumstance. And then again, if we're working at home, we've got our family around us. So I'd like to suggest this question that what would it be like if we took the opportunity to use this time to discover who we are and who we are at our best? Because everything around us has shifted. And I kind of like to think about it as a puzzle, right? Like if you drop a puzzle on the floor, all the pieces fall around, you can pick up the pieces that you like and maybe create a new puzzle. So I think this is an opportunity. So what I'm going to focus on specifically is that we can change the way we see the world, change the way we see ourselves by using our strengths. There are a number of strengths tools out there. Today I'm going to focus on the VIA strength. It was originally the Values and Action Inventory, and you can reach it at viacharacter.org. There's a free version, and then there's also a $20 version that shows your ranking. I think that this is really an important test. It looks at who you are at your best. And the way I look at the strengths tool or using my strengths is if I'm just going along and talking to somebody and something happens and it punches me in the gut, they've probably crossed or hit a character strength of mine that I might not have realized. So taking the survey is simple. It's about 20 minutes. It's not timed for some of us that like timed, but what you walk away with is an idea of your 24 strengths. Your top strengths are your signature strengths, and then we go down to our lower strengths. It's who you are at your best. It's looking at us when we're flourishing. What does it look like when we're operating out of our strengths is a really powerful question. And so what happens when we use our strengths? We feel elevated. We see the world differently because we're aware of our lens. I think we become more in the moment. When I have a character strength of kindness, and I used to love doing stuff like holding doors. I find other ways to do it, but I can kind of lose track of time too when I'm in my strengths, when I'm in flow. Kindness is number one. As I said, a neighbor had surgery and they asked for some food. So I don't like to cook generally. And I made this big thing of chicken soup, and I made biscuits, and I made cookies. It took hours, but I was so happy, almost moved to tears at some point because I was using my top strength. Using my top strength is something I don't like to do normally, which is cook. So it can really help us see the world and through that sort of flow lens, if you will, as well. Also, we're happier and more energized. It's when we're using our strengths, the fundamental part, it was actually made to help us look at what is it like to see the world and act in the world from flourishing. So it does help us be happier and more energized, and that's important too. And so when we're in our strengths, we can also look at ourselves differently. We also want to look at others differently. And so the question is today, how do we use this at home? A lot of the work I do is with strengths, and I might have a client look at their strengths and then try to identify the strengths of their boss, for instance, or their colleague. We complement each other, right? And so sometimes my strengths are different than my boss or colleagues, which is really good. But until I really identify the differences, it can rub me the wrong way, for instance. And also, I would say it's a great tool for using with children at home. We have our kids are around us, our families around us. I have my husband's niece with us, and so there's different personalities. There is an adolescent version that can be used, and I want to call out Leah Waters, who has written a great book called The Strength Switch. I can't say it, which looks at strength-based parenting, and so it's that beautiful way of looking at sort of, I'm going to say glass half full, which is a common term, but what does it look like when we're looking at strengths of our children and our family? My daughter she's an actress, and so it was a bit of a challenge to raise her. And when she was in 5th grade, that's when I learned about the VIA, we did her strengths, and we discovered that she had bravery as number 1, and honesty as number 2, and then love and be loved as number 24. So it helped shift our perspective of her in that she was brave and honest and would come home and just tell it all like it is to us. And I'm not going to say it didn't matter, but it didn't occur to her to worry about how we would feel about it. So it helped us look at parenting her differently, and we gave her more opportunities to be brave. We would, take her out on rocks, and she learned how to be in the circus and things like that. So she used her bravery, and it took the pressure off of us as parents. Often I will do the VIA with a client, and then we'll look at their wife or husband, and then we'll look at their kids, and you can see all the different dynamics and how it works. So strength spotting is looking for strengths in others and then how they complement ourselves. I want to call out Tayyab Rashid as another resource that you can look at for a different strengths perspective. He's done a lot of work on how to use your strengths. There's movies that you can call out that you can play the game of looking at strengths in movies. You can look at strengths in stories. There's always a character strength that can be found. So I think it's just a really rich way to look at things. And unfortunately, I think people forget about it. I'll do strengths with people, and then I'll be coaching them for a while, and I'll ask them what their strengths are, and they forget, and then they find them again and are just enlightened. And so I think that our negativity bias can get in the way, and we just go, oh, that's cool. I'm good at this, or my top strength is kindness or love, and I'm going to put it aside, and now I'm going to go back to my world of I'm hitting the grind. So I want to really make the argument now that looking at the world, our families, our colleagues, from a strength-based perspective is just as valid and really, really important. So I think that's what I have to pitch today.
Thank you so much, Sandy. I almost jumped in the middle and wanted to say that is so neat about your daughter, and how with bravery you looked for, okay, let her climb rocks, let her do circus things, let her do.
Yeah, neither of us have bravery at all. So it was like, okay.
So a few questions, actually I'll ask the people who are listening first. What are you taking away from what Sandy has said in terms of an action that you may experiment with over this next week? We have Sandy here with us on a Monday. So what are you taking away that you can do between this Monday and the end of the week? Okay, first question for you, Sandy. I'm gonna read it off. How can you talk about, as a family or whomever you're sheltering in place with, how can you talk about strengths briefly during the day-to-day time? So rather than sit down and give your family a workshop about strengths and make it very formal, no, really, how can you imbue it into different parts of life? I'm not sure if I'm using imbue correctly, but just stick it in.
That's a good word. I don't think it needs a workshop. When people read their strengths, there's this aha. Even kids will get it. And so they feel elevated. And so it's just starting to play with them a little bit and calling them out a little bit. Wow, that's great. Look at your strength and bravery. took that spider out by its leg. What? And so, or kind of feeling, maybe I'm feeling sensitive and I have love really high. Whoop, there goes overuse of my strength of love. So kind of weaving it, I think, into the lexicon is important.
So just mentioning it, you're saying, just kind of saying, yes, go ahead.
First we're looking for it. First, we're looking for it, right? We got to look for it and notice it and then call it out. Just like good parenting, right? When we catch our kids or colleagues, we catch our colleagues doing something right. We want to call that out. So.
Okay, so we're calling things out, and we can do that spontaneously with like you said, at dinner or at different points just throughout the day.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what about so another question that's come up, let me read it again, is what about, oh my gosh, I'm missing my question. It's here, but I'm missing it. It was a question about how you said to actually do this when you're cooking. So you do this when you're cooking. How can we use our strengths when we're doing mundane things like house cleaning? How can we use, whether it's the 24 that we found by doing the VIA assessment, or just strengths that we know about ourselves? Like we know that we're good at, like you said, if someone knows they're good at kindness, how can we use, or what if someone's good at creativity? How can they use that in the service of their sweeping the floor?
You know, I almost wrote a paper on this a while ago, but I still did my own house painting, right? And so when I was young, I had my house painting business before college. And so it's a horrible job, right? You got to plaster stuff and sand, it's dirty. However, I keep picturing how beautiful it's going to look, and all the sweat equity that goes into it, to me, is about that future beauty. Same with cleaning, right? I think, okay, this toilet, I'm grateful for the toilet, and this toilet's going to be clean, and then I have gratitude for it, right? I savor the clean house too. So that's that appreciation of beauty and excellence for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So really just looking not only at the specific thing, but the downstream consequences of that thing.
Totally, yeah.
You know, it's really funny you say this. This is just a small little thing. We have a daily happiness saying at our table that we turn every day with the kids at the dining table. And the one yesterday said something like, do something today that your future self will thank you for. And my daughter noticed that I was cleaning all around the house yesterday. And she's like, oh, I think this fits. This fits with what we happen to do here.
Emily.
Okay, we have a question for you. How would you use VIA strengths with remote teams, especially when we all seem to be on Zoom together all the time?
Yeah, thank you. Really good question. A lot of work that I do with clients is with VIA and the remote teams. And so it's a different way of looking at each other. So I would say definitely take the strengths tool and bring them all up together and look at where are we similar? Where are we different? How do I show up? And that helps us to look at, sometimes we overuse strengths too. So my kindness can step in to other people. Maybe they have teamwork high or fairness high, and they sort of have made a kind of a boundary with that. My kindness, because I'm kind, can step in, and that'll get me in trouble. So what we learned to do, and I did use this in my last company I worked in, going, whoops, Sandy, there you go, being too kind. Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, I'm overstepping my boundary. It helps us look at what is underneath the surface. So doing the survey, there's also a really good video that I think the viacharacter.org did. It's a short, maybe 12-minute video to kind of introduce it. So I would introduce that with teams, have them take the survey. The free version is just as good. It still ranks. Oh, yeah. And then have them look at each other's strengths and really just talk about it.
So you seem to be a really big proponent of not only just doing strengths for yourself, but getting the lay of the land, whether it's, as this person asked, about for your team or people you meet with, or for your family or people you're sheltering in place with, but just knowing what people's buttons in a sense are.
Yeah, and I think it works well. You know, I'm a consultant too, right? So I have clients and I listen for their strengths, and that makes me look at what's important to them. What do they value? So even for business development, I think, okay, what's really important that they value and how can I match that for them? So it's a whole, I think it's, out of all the stuff I did in MAP when I graduated, 2007, this to me still stands out as one of the best things that I learned. I still use it.
And we notice that with you, we sometimes have these executive coaches calls together, and Sandy will just say, look, in my coaching sessions this week, we're going back to strengths. We're going back to strengths. It's a tough discussion with their boss. We're going back to strengths. It's something they need to help a team member. We're going back to strengths. So, I mean, you really do, in bad situations and in good, you open people's eyes to it.
Well, to that point, Sonia, I mentioned it earlier. I literally had a client today who's having a rub. They got acquired, right? And they're having a rub with this new boss. And so their homework is literally to look at the strengths. I want them to look at their own VIA, read the definitions, and look for what are the strengths of this colleague or this new boss they have a challenge with. It starts to shift the perspective. It adds some compassion. It's also kind of like a secret tool to use too, right? Okay, if I know I hear them saying it's fair or not fair, then how might I work with that? How might I tone my bravery down a little bit if this person has, humility really high? What does that look like? It's another tool.
I love how you're describing it as a secret tool.
Yeah.
Because we don't, as people who have had coaches who know positive psychology, or as those coaches, we don't have to say what we're doing. We don't have to say, and now we're using.
Right. And now we've got positive psychology.
Right. But just by calling out, oh, I see you using your bravery, or I see you using gratitude right now. I see you doing this thing. Just calling that out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And did you need to use your honesty just then? That's the question.
Well, that brings me to the next question I have for you. When have you seen a client really overuse their strength or use their strength badly?
Oh, I had this one client. They were a top finance person, and they had humor, honesty, and judgment, their top three. So they'd crack a joke, and then because they felt like they had to say it, and then they'd call it back. So it was sort of like you're watching this person act really wishy-washy. Very skilled person was a CFO, but that behavior of blurting something out and then retracting it right away was a really terrible habit. So that was a bad one. And then I had a client, another one with bravery, honesty, judgment, and then teamwork. So this person had rules and was not afraid to say it and alienated themselves terribly. Now let's look at our lower strengths too. They are ones, I don't spend a lot of time on them because they're my lower strengths. I've got self-regulation really low. I know that you do not put a plate of cookies in front of me, for instance, but this person also had self-regulation really low. So and also social intelligence. So they weren't able to know when to use their strengths necessarily. So they would come on like a battering ram and alienate. It was a real problem. And the strengths work did help.
What did you do? So for example, with these couple of people, what did you do to round out their strengths or to have them use their strengths in a different way?
Yeah. So first of all, no strength stands alone. So I had them really the concept of kind of there's that just right with strengths, and then sometimes we can overuse or underuse. So in these cases, they were overusing and they weren't aware. So there's that moment of pause. There's asking that question, do I have to say it now? In these cases, or what strength am I using? And I would do a lot of work with them. In this case, we would do some preparatory work. What are you going to bring? But also let's look at, is there another way that you could look at this? And then they go, oh, right. I didn't have to bring my bravery and honesty right then. Bravery might have been actually to step back. So really discerning those.
So using your own strengths in a discerning way and monitoring how you're using your strengths.
Yeah.
We are coming to the end of our 20 minutes, so I will ask Sandy our last question. Our last question is, if people take just one thing away from everything you have said today, what is it? Should that be?
The question for me?
Yeah, that's the question for you. If people take just one thing away.
Yeah, I think that inside of us, that we do have our best selves. And this is such an easy tool to discover that. And it's really as important to walk around looking at our strengths and using our strengths as it is to walk around using our weaknesses. As a matter of fact, I think it's more important. As a workshop, I might ask people, okay, if I'm going to ask you to give me 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses, the weaknesses come like that. The strengths take longer. So strengths are valid, strengths are important, and remember them. It's not being cocky or being full of hubris. It's saying, this is who I am at my best, and I really want to bring that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandy. Thank you. Thanks to everyone. This is the end of our formal part. We have one question that's come in since then. I'm going to give it to Sandy. Feel free to drop off. We like to make these nice and tight 20 minutes. We'll see you again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific or 2 p.m. Eastern for our 20 minutes. We're going to ask Sandy this question that's just come in. And people are saying thanks. I'm also going to post in the link right now, the Via Strengths link. And also I'll find that video, the 8-minute video that Sandy's talking
Awesome.
about.
Thank you.
You can review both of those later. We also will post these on the Facebook so you can see it there, and we'll be sending you the YouTube link. So you'll get messages from us. But in the meantime, I'll ask this question, and you will also see 2 links that I'll post right now into the chat. Sandy, here's a question for you. How can one recognize when they're seeking approval rather than helping someone express their strengths?
That's okay, seeking approval versus helping express. I think that they're 2 different things in a way. I would, first of all, if I'm going to answer that from a strengths perspective, I'd step back and say, what am I bringing to the table? There is a strength of love and forgiveness, and sometimes those can make us approach the world a little bit like we want love in particular, right? I want to be loved, and so maybe I'm bringing that strength a bit too far forward, and I don't need to be. I really would just step back and look at what strengths I'm bringing to the forefront with that kind of question.
Yeah, that makes sense. So evaluate yourself as you're stepping in with your strengths.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you everyone so much. I've posted 1 link and I'll be posting the second. Thank you so much. See you again tomorrow. We look forward to seeing you. Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you, Sonia.
All the best.